This video is brought to you by Law Excellence IAS Academy.
Dear students, good morning. Welcome to Deep Daily Editorial Enrichment Program of Law Excellence IAS. Let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 15th June 2019. The first article, The Mysterious Case of the GM Brinjal Cultivation. Here the GM stands for Genetically Modified Brinjal. In India, there is Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee. It is under the Ministry of Environment and Forests. It has to give approval for any of the crop to be cultivated, genetically modified crop to be cultivated. The BT brinjal was cleared by this Genetic Engineering Approval Committee, but however, the government did not allow it for cultivation, citing some food security reasons, safety reasons. In this context, surprisingly, the GM brinjal found being cultivated at a farmer's field in Haryana. Then it means that the seed has entered into the market. How come this seed entered the market is the question over here. And there are many fears about the GM food crop cultivation in India. Though these are being cultivated in USA, Canada, Bangladesh, Australia, India has its own apprehensions. In this context, unregulated cultivation of this crop is ultimately going to damage biodiversity of the country. And second, when they are being found, these are to be destroyed. So in this context, farmers are facing losses. And farmers do not know by seeing that either it is a genetically modified seed or a sampling. So how can the farmers be punished when they do not know to differentiate between them? It is the government's failure to regulate the markets. So that's why government has to regulate and observe these markets for spurious seeds and also to the genetically modified seeds entering in it. On the other side, there is another argument. Today, most of the farmers across the world are taking the advantage of income from the genetically modified crops. But in India, due to some unfound fears, the genetically modified crops are not allowed for cultivation. So, GM crops are essential to increase food production. This increased food production is essential for food security and also increased production levels, decreased pests, etc., increases income of the farmers. Shetkari Sangathan in Maharashtra is actively working towards introduction of genetically modified crops. They also argue that the GM crops one way or the other way entering into India. Let me put it this way. The BT cotton is a genetically modified crop and cotton seed oil is widely consumed in the states of Gujarat and Maharashtra. Similarly, soya bean and all these are genetically modified crops. Oil which is extracted from them has roots in these crops. So in this context, it is better these to be allowed to well regulate them rather than allowing for banning them and making the illicit trade to grow. This is the other side of the argument. The next is reversing the scale of priorities. This article talks about sustainable development. What is sustainable development? There is Brundtland Committee on Sustainable Development. It has defined it. Sustainable development is taking the benefits for the present generation without compromising the benefits for the future generations. So we have to bring in a parity between the needs of present and the needs of the future generations. That concept we describe as sustainable development. Intergenerational parity shall be maintained. The next is the Supreme Court of India has put this sustainable development as a concept to the test of utilitarianism. What is meant by utilitarianism? So here, maximum good for the maximum people. So whenever environment has to be compromised, then the utilitarian principle has to be applied. If certain people are getting displaced, certain people are losing habitat, and more people are getting benefited, then obviously the balance is benefiting the more. That's why it has to be allowed for. So, in this, whenever the economic development coming in conflict with ecology, let's take a road has to be made, and economic development has come in conflict with ecology over there, then the road giving more wealth to the people, more economic opportunity to the people, has to be given higher priority compared to the ecological concerns over there. This is the judgment given by Supreme Court in Kudremukh National Park case. So in India, the sustainable development is being compromised because of the judgment of the Supreme Court on utilitarianism. Now, Madras High Court has given a definition again which is much or which is having strong foundations in the concept of the sustainable development. In PV Krishnamurthy versus Union of India case, Madras High Court has stopped the construction of Chennai and Salem highway project. There are three concerns it has raised. One is environmental impact assessment was not taken up. Second, for a farmer, the land is God, mother. And the second, it is kind of a prestige to him. And land is a source of livelihood. In this context, forcibly taking away the land, it is unadvisable. So that's why economic and social considerations it took. The third one is intergenerational equity or intergenerational concerns. Making of a highway which is going through the forest and also national parks ultimately leads for the development of new establishment on the side of the road. As the new establishments develop, probably it leads the destruction of the entire ecosystem over there. So the forest which has to be guarded for the interests of the future and the present generations will be lost. So under three considerations, it has declared acquisition of the property by the National Highways Authority of India for construction of 8-lane highway between Chennai and Salem as illegal. In this context, the matter is coming before the Supreme Court. Here, the author says it is an opportunity to revive the sustainable development into our legal and also administrative lexicon. That's what the author is trying to tell us here. Shaky building blocks. This is about the foundational literacy in India. What are the aspects we call it as foundational literacy? Now, early reading habits, development of speed reading, etc., writing, memory, all these consider foundational literacy. And added to that, we also have aspects related to numeracy. Everything is counted as foundational literacy. And there is a report that comes every year in India, annual survey of annual status of education report. So this says that foundational learning outcomes of children in India are very poor. What are the reasons can be? The foundational learning in India starts with the Anganwadi centers. And the teachers in Anganwadi centers are not equipped with the necessary skills to do so. And the second is, there is no emphasis on foundational learning. We want to provide or we want to move the child from one class to the other class. Promoting the child across the classes is the priority rather than focusing on learning outcomes. It was the priority both for teachers and also the parents. And the third thing is, our foundational learning do not emphasize the understanding of the child. We treat all children are alike. It means every child is unique, needs are unique. Some children possess dyslexia. Probably you might have watched this movie, Tare Zameen Par. So, our education system fails to identify these children who have some special needs. So, all children are alike. This is the attitude when we impart the foundational learning. If you take most of the Western countries, even for that matter, countries like Thailand, they emphasize in the initial years only on foundational learning. So, if you talk about Einstein, his foundational learning took till the age of 7 years. So, we cannot expect every child to be on equal path or equal pedestal with regard to foundational learning is concerned. If we can focus enough on the foundational learning, the later learning, understanding, and comprehension becomes very easy for the child. So India need to focus on foundational literacy. So what is the latest research? Many of the things, reading, writing, numeracy, all these can be taught simultaneously. In India, we see them sequential. So we say, first 2 years, we talk about reading, and the next writing, and then comprehension. Like that, we try to take foundational skills in a sequential order. But the literacy says that students can grasp the things simultaneously and the learning outcomes are better simultaneously. And the draft national education policy says that the volunteers shall be given a chance to teach foundational learning. Remember again, every literate person cannot teach or cannot bring in literacy. So this is a very specialized and focused activity. For that, teachers are very much important. These need to be trained appropriately. So the draft national education policy shall emphasize on teacher training, observing the special needs of the children, and also imparting different skills simultaneously to the interests. The pedagogy and curriculum shall be evolved, centered around the child, not around the education system. That's what it states. Beyond the wall. So, in any democratic system, opposition and leadership in opposition, a strong opposition leadership is very essential. In this case, in India, for the sake of India, Congress shall retain its status as an opposition party and it is expected to have a strong leadership. So, a sense of entitlement across the family and also the sense of insecurity that is existing. Both these are playing havoc with the opposition party. So that's why it is not just the case with the Congress party. Even in many of the states, let's take AIADMK, which is in power today, and tomorrow, if it becomes opposition, there is no effective leadership. Whenever personified leaders, dynasty politics enter, ultimately it curtails the development of the secondary leadership. When there is no strong secondary leadership, the sustenance of the political parties becomes difficult. So that's why the political parties which can stay in power shall be ideology based. When the political parties are ideology based, they will be in a continuum. There will be a leadership continuum without any vacuum. So, in India, it is the time the political parties think twice before taking our lineage or dynasty into consideration. Now let's take TDP in Andhra Pradesh. It has lost miserably. Here, the TDP had strong ideological lineages during the time of NTR. Now, when Chandrababu Naidu came at the helm of the affairs, he started encouraging the business people into the politics. Whenever business people enter the politics, the foundation or the roots of the party becomes very shaky. So we need to be very careful with it. So strong grounded leadership centered around ideology rather than opportunism is essential today. Full disclosure. Now, SEBI, it is a market regulator in India. So many of the companies, they take loans. These are through various instruments. These are called debt instruments. So these debt instruments are to be regulated by SEBI. And there are certain rating agencies. These rating agencies give star rating to these debt instruments. Let's take IL&FS. It releases certain debt instruments into the markets. Investors will buy these debt instruments and the money goes into ILFS and ILFS does business with this money. So, most of the investors, these are guided by the rating given by the rating agencies. So, there are some issues with these rating agencies. One is conflict of interest. The people who has to pay to these rating agencies are the companies which are issuing the debt instruments. In that cases, these rating agencies will be more concerned about these companies' interest rather than the investor interest. So rating agencies have to be more, conflict free. And the second is, today SEBI also has brought in certain clear nomenclature to distinguish the status of one company from the other company. It says that Every company has to be rated uniformly as strong, adequate, stretched, or poor. So these are the four classifications which they brought in. So in this context, SEBI trying to provide a framework for the regulation of rating agencies is a welcome step. And the next is India to impose retaliatory tariffs on 29 American goods. Here, two terms we have to understand. One is import tariffs. America imposed tariffs on Indian steel and aluminium, 25% on steel, 10% on aluminium. It means that if 100 rupees of steel is exposed, then 10% of tariff together it becomes 110 in United States market. And in retaliation of this, India also has imposed tariffs on 29 American goods. The third is in America there is something called GSP, Generalized System of Preferences. Certain developing countries are given extra tariff benefits under GSP. India was the largest beneficiary till yesterday. Mr. Trump has removed India from GSP list. It means the tariff benefits India will not be able to get any further. These are the two things. Finally, have a great day. All the best.